What is the best way to build a collection? I'll tell you right now, it's not buying sealed product and throwing it all in a box. It's the strategic acquisition of key cards, cards that will go into your decks now and are versatile enough to be useful in the future as well. So in this video, I'll break down the 20 most important cards from Edge of Eternity to add to your Commander collection. To do this, I scoured the depths of space Skyfall at warp speed, pulling Klingon needles from Jedi haystacks, all to bring you about 20 cards from Edge of Eternity that you should add to your Commander collection. Welcome to Absolute Cardboard, where we focus on budget Commander decks, cool accessories, and building a collection you can be proud of. Alright, the fringe cards on this list, honorable mentions, whatever you want to call them. Voidforge Titan and Vault Guard Trooper. These both have really solid and universal effects. Vault Guard Trooper can get you some extra cards in a hyper aggro strategy, or dump your hand in a reanimation strategy. And Voidforge Titan is kind of like Phyrexian Arena on a stick, netting you one card a turn, more or less, since Void is super easy to trigger in Commander, and we will discuss later on some more Void cards. Now, the only problem is these are both fairly expensive at 5 mana, and I get it. Any cheaper, they might be too good, especially for uncommons, but I do think that picking these up will be pretty good as their effects are very solid. Now, All Fate Scroll is pretty good if you envision using a lot of 5 mana commanders, as I always allow for some 3 mana ramp if you can use it to speed up your commander to drop on turn 4. And this is somewhat similar to Commander Sphere, but this has a giant upside later in the game, where you can pay like 7 to just draw like 8 cards out of nowhere, versus getting just 1 free from that Commander Sphere. It won't happen all the time, and I wouldn't plan for it, but every once in a while this could swing a game wide open. Avendo Brush Razor is a 3 mana dork, at which itself isn't that super great. However, the fact that it can facilitate sacrifice strategies for a supercharged ramp is pretty good. What's even better is how it can help with a sacrifice strategy passively. If you're sacrificing stuff, this will just net you a free exile draw-ish type ability. Now keep in mind you have to sacrifice something on your turn to cast these spells, but it will count any cards that you've previously exiled with it, but it's just that instance of that particular card. So if for some reason, if someone blinks it, it counts as a new creature, and you'll need a separate exile zone. Frenzied Baloth is going to find lots of homes. In fact, I can't really think of a creature-based deck in green where you wouldn't want to run this. It won't always be super useful when in play, as you may or may not be playing against counters or stuff like that, but having this in your toolbox is very handy. It's great counterplay, which means it will be used in a lot of styles and a lot of decks. Pull Through the Weft is a lot of value. The double regrowth effect is nice, but combined with the double land ramp, man, this card is wild. If you think about it, 4 mana to put 2 lands into play is kind of the standard for double land ramping, and this just costs 1 more. Sure, you need to finagle having your way into getting 2 lands into your graveyard, but in Commander that's not that difficult, especially given that a lot of times green will want landfall effects or Crucible of World type effects, so you will want to be running stuff like fetch lands of different varieties to utilize those effects anyways. Emergency Eject might be my new favorite piece of interaction. This is following down the generous gift track, which actually probably started with Afterlife now that I think about it. It's continued recently with cards like Stroke of Midnight. However, the drawback on Emergency Eject requiring further investment from your opponent to get any benefit might make it my favorite interaction in a long time. Now, speaking of interaction, have you interacted with the like button? It's a free way to support the channel and a good way to work on your clicking skills. Your mother and I saw your report card and you got a D in clicking. I thought I raised you better than that. I love having diversity in wipes, so I'm really happy that Edge of Eternities has a good amount of wipes in it. First and foremost being Beyond the Quiet. 5 mana to exile all creatures would probably make it a bit better than Wrath of God, maybe just a bit worse in some cases. It would be around Wrath of God, which is kind of the gold standard anyways, and the fact that this can just hit spacecraft probably puts it to being just a bit better and over the top of a normal Wrath of God. And being just a bit better than Wrath of God is really good. Singularity Rupture is just a great wipe for mill decks, sure, but don't sleep on the fact that this could work as self-mill in a lot of graveyard-based Sultai decks. This is definitely going to be a new toy for my Muldrotha with Garuda deck. It's a tad expensive, sure, but cards like Austere Command and Farewell show that 6 mana is fine for a wipe if you can get something else out of it. Ruinous Rampage is a great way to wipe mana rocks and smaller artifact strategies. The damage to each opponent isn't really necessary, but it's here, so that's fine. Now, this is only 1 mana less than Shatterstorm, so is it worth it to run when you can just have Shatterstorm? Well, remember that in these type of wipes, you can build your deck to hopefully have an advantage due to the breakpoint requirement. In other words, if you have a ton of artifacts at mana value 4 or more, you should be able to come out of this at the end ahead. Mutinous Massacre gives me strong Nipton Lottery vibes, which is one of my favorite wipes of all time. This has just crazy chaos vibes, and it's in the perfect crazy chaos colors. I think this wipe really has some legs to it since you can control what's being destroyed and what is going to be joining your team temporarily. Though it does have the downside that you can't just fire it off and relax. It's not a board wipe in the traditional sense, but it is a wipe to some degree with huge potential for player elimination. We talked earlier about how easy Void is to trigger, so we have a few Void cards that should be picked up. Alpha Real, whose name I will just now refer to as the real Alpha, is probably the best Void card long term. Like, you can just throw him in any black deck and he's an attack threat. Black does not have a problem sacrificing things, so this guy can be slotted almost anywhere with black, and it will be a threat on a tangent that your opponents may or may not be expecting. Other Void cards that I would recommend are Tragic Trajectory and Hymn of the Fallen. Tragic Trajectory is just like another Tragic Slip, but not quite as big a debuff, but it's also easier to trigger. Hymn of the Fallen is great. It's Surveil 1, draw 2 cards, and lose a life for 2 mana. That's a terrific rate. And again, Void is super easy to pull off, making this probably one of the better 2 mana value draw 2s that black has to offer. Now let's focus on a few finishers, things that will serve as ways to end the game that can be used in many strategies. For example, Biotech Specialist, which is a card, but it's also something you can get a degree in from an online unaccredited school. Scarier than unaccredited school degrees being accepted more and more in the past 20 years is this guy's second ability, which will serve as a solid way to finish people off if you can swing an infinite loop of artifacts coming into and leaving the battlefield. Umbral Caller Zealot is another infinite payoff for sacrificing. Hell, in a gen deck, you could run this with the before mentioned Biotech Specialist to get an infinite cycle with artifacts and infinite damage and milling your entire deck. How that translates to a win condition, I don't know, but Commander's mostly about confusing your opponents, not winning the game. Wolfstalker Arden is a fine dude to just throw out and kill people by playing a lot of artifacts, but I think the real strength is that you can warp it out for 1, do your shenanigans, giving you the option of playing it out and grinding your opponents down or going for it all in one big turn. That little bit of versatility might make this slightly better than traditional effects like this, even though those effects might be cheaper to get out and keep in play. Terra Symbiosis is a draw payoff for +1/+1 counter strategies, which are getting pretty common these days. I think that might even be better on rate than Mystic Study. I guess that depends on if you have a steady enough stream of counters to put out, but this card should be a powerhouse. If this particular style of play intrigues you, I would also suggest grabbing a copy of Meltstrat or Eulogist, which probably isn't as good, but it's fine. It's like a slightly worse Morbid Opportunist, and that's not too bad on its own. I like Impulse Effects, which means I am legally obligated to Consult the Star Charts. It's basically an impulse that grows with the number of lands you have in play. You can kick it to get 2 cards instead of 1, but even at 2 mana, looking at the top 8 cards of your library to grab one is really nice. Given that this is splashable as well, I can see myself using this card for a long time. And now we get to my favorite card of the set, Starfield Shepherd. Grabbing a Plains and putting it into your hand is okay, it's not great, but tutoring for a 1 mana value creature is very powerful, especially when you get to do it at 2 mana with this warp effect. Pair that with the fact that this works well with blink effects, and you can often get multiple triggers of this back to back to back. Thank you for watching. This was my first try at a video like this, so if you have any constructive criticism, feel free to leave them in the comments. If you liked the video, feel free to leave a like, sub to the channel, and maybe watch another video. Other than that, I will see you around.